I'd like to talk this morning about one of the areas where I see the most common misunderstanding. And that revolves around when there is identification. When there is identification with the character, with the body, with the separate one. So the grace of the seeing that most all of you have experienced, for maybe most of you it is a mainstay. And that is this recognition that while there may seem to be a separate independent contractor who makes choices, that in truth, when that one is searched for, when the chooser is searched for, when the thinker is searched for, it can never be found. When there is the witnessing of thought as it is appearing, it is never possible to find a chooser that chooses the thought before the thought appears. It's all just conditioning playing itself out. And in order for this to be seen, there has to be a willingness to stop and look inward. A willingness to forego the habit of constant darting of attention away from, which is part of what is conditioned. And what happens for almost everyone when there is this grace is there are these intermittent periods of true seeing where it always feels beautiful, where there is the release of all of the conditioned suffering. And there is a taste of what is completely free of all suffering, and clarity that all of the suffering is not really real. It is just a confluence of thoughts and sensations and emotions that are coming up by themselves. That what seems personal is really not personal. That where there seems to be an issue, there is no issue because there is no independent one doing anything. It's just the way it seems. When this occurs, when the play brings forth what has previously caused suffering, there is no suffering. There is no one to be found that is affected by it. It is just a play, an imprint. And there is that which is aware of the imprint, which is untouched by the imprint. But there is this constant ebb and flow of seeing and re-identification, where there is the being brought back into the contraction, into the emotions, experiencing the life from inside the habit of being behind the eyes, inside the body. And the story that immediately spins when this happens is, this is my fault. This is where I've gone wrong. This is where I come in. So I have been graced to see, but then when there is re-identification, then I am lost. I'm failing. And this is the return of the familiar torture. The failing one. But in the discovery that there is no chooser, how can there be someone who is failing when there is the return of re-identification? How can there be someone doing something wrong when the discovery has revealed there is no one? There is a belief that when I master it, there will no longer be re-identification. It is a myth. It is not that there is no longer re-identification for the character. It is that you no longer have any relationship with any of it. It can be so light. There is no one there to fail. When re-identification returns, there are two possibilities. The greatest possibility lies in the recognition that there is no one who chose this identification. A trusting of the process when the mind and body are squirming. A trusting in the wisdom that is orchestrating all of it. When this happens, it becomes very clear that there is a wisdom to this identification and release of identification, that all of it is doing something in perfect harmony. It is not up to someone. There is something that knows much, much deeper than what your mind can wrap around, and it is perfectly unraveling everything. It is just to let it do what it is doing. There is no separate one who has any separate power. There is conditioning that creates this false belief. And that false belief returns for almost everyone when there is the experience of re-identification. But if you are to be freed, you are to be freed through all of the oscillations, and the oscillation which prevents or creates the challenge is the re-identification. It is not that that doesn't happen, it is the recognition of who you are while it is occurring. Finding the chooser, finding who is doing it. Now, granted, there are times where that is not possible, where the attention gets swallowed in such a big way that everything is forgotten in the intensity. For some, that does not occur any longer. For those that this does intermittently occur, it is to let it do its work. This is what is called holy burning. What can it burn? It burns the box. It burns the conditioning. It burns up what it is you are trying to free yourself from. In other words, when it is happening and the character is fighting like mad with what is going on, you let the fight be. You just feel it. I hear over and over again from many who have tasted this so deeply and so frequently. But when I am identified, then I'm doing it wrong. Then there is some problem. How can there be such thing as a problem? There is no such thing as a problem. Grace is every single thing. How can there be something outside of grace? You let this grace do the carrying, and then it is all taken care of in its timing. That's the beauty.